While I don't consider myself an expert in remote dueling at this point over the past couple of months, I have done several remote duel matches, and I wanted to give my thoughts on that in today's video. If you remember, a couple months ago, I did a few matches on and off camera with my friend Ricky. I posted one of them for you guys to watch, and then most recently, obviously, I played in the Remote Duel Invitational, and then after that, I also did a live stream where I played against a couple friends in front of an audience. So while I haven't really had a chance to do a true remote duel locals, I have done several remote duels, and I wanted to give you my opinion on them after I've done that many. And we'll get to this a little bit later, but I also messaged a couple of my friends who have actually done several remote duel local tournaments so that I can ask their opinion on how it works. Anyway, if you don't know what a remote duel is, let's take a look at the official Yu-Gi-Oh website and see how Konami describes them. With the disruption of regular in-store events that allowed official tournament stores to hold tournaments and engage with their community, it's become difficult for duelists who regularly meet up for duels. We hope that by using Remote Duel, duelists and official tournament stores can stay engaged and play Yu-Gi-Oh while respecting social distancing and other health guidelines and staying safe during these challenging times. So basically, remote duels are a way for players to actually play Yu-Gi-Oh officially and earn prizes while doing so. Konami gives you 4 different ways to remote duel. You can do it through Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist, Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist Link Evolution, or most notably the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, which I think is what most people are excited about. This is a way for people to play against their friends, against their players that are at their locals, and actually earn prizes and help out their locals at the same time. First off, I want to mention that when they posted the original remote dueling picture, like the little drawing that they did, I saw a lot of people asking about, well, does the average person even have this type of setup? The answer is no, the average person does not have the setup that is in the picture. However, I don't think you need that complicated of a setup to enjoy remote dueling. In fact, if you go back and watch the remote duel that I did with my friend Ricky, we do not have a setup like that with an overhead camera. Both of us just put our regular webcams at the top of our monitors and angled them downward. While an overhead camera setup like I used in the Remote Duel Invitational is preferred, I don't actually feel you need that, and I've seen many people even using their cell phones on small tripods because I think there are some applications where you can live stream from your cell phone to your opponent. And in my own experience, all of the technical difficulties that I've had happen while remote dueling have only been because I was trying to record it or trying to stream it. I think if I was just playing in a regular locals, they wouldn't have been issues. Pretty much all of the problems that I had were because I had OBS open or other programs open trying to record the duel that was happening. If I was just playing though against regular opponents and wasn't trying to record it, I wouldn't have had any issues. So now I want to give you some positive aspects of remote dueling in my opinion, and then tell you a little bit about the 2 people that I asked that actually have been to many remote duel locals, and they'll give their opinion as well. So first off, I think remote dueling, one of the biggest selling points of it is that you actually get a personal experience. You get to sort of talk to your opponent. I've never found that typing responses to my opponent has ever been as personal as just speaking to them, even if it's through Discord. I think this is a huge aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh! I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Is all about the social side of it. It's really fun to hang out and meet new people and talk to people while you're playing them. So I think that that is one of the bigger selling points of remote dueling. It feels a lot more personal. I think that this also goes hand in hand with the fact that you're playing with physical cards. Now, to some people, you might think that playing with physical cards is a downside because now you have to buy cards and all that stuff, but personally, I don't know. I mean, there was like a 2-month period where I didn't even touch any sort of Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks, and that was really, really sad. And I remember doing that original sort of test run with my friend Ricky where we were playing the remote duel before we started recording, and it was just fun to actually hold physical cards and shuffle the decks and play cards on the table. It's hard to describe, and I'm sure many people will say, well, who really cares about that? But as someone that has been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For a very, very long time, there is something special about actually holding the cards in your hands while you're playing them. Still, this might not be for everyone, so I'll say that the last really big positive, in my opinion, is that when you play remote duels at locals, you are earning prizes. because you're earning OTS packs, and that's a pretty big deal. My friend Zach, who I'll talk about in a second here, he's actually earned a ton of OTS packs, and he's posted some openings on his channel, so it seems like you can earn a lot of prize support through remote duels, which is really cool. You wouldn't necessarily be able to do that if you just played against random people online outside of a remote duel tournament. Of course, there are bigger organized online tournaments that do have prize support, but sometimes those might be more competitive than you actually want to play in because they're not just the locals. Those are going to have some high class players playing a lot of meta strategies. I think at locals there's always this sort of idea that people can play whatever they want and just have a good time, and I think that from talking to the people that I have been talking to about remote duel locals, it seems like that actually has stayed true even right now. People still are more willing to play sort of fun decks in the remote duel locals versus playing a serious online tournament. As far as asking my friends about their remote duel locals, the first person I asked was MBT Yu-Gi-Oh, who I'm sure many of you already know about, but he had a couple important things to say that I really did enjoy. First off, he mentioned that remote duel locals are good in general, maybe even after the pandemic, because it allows players to actually play in locals even if they're not super close to them. I always see comments from people that say things like, oh, my locals is an hour away or 2 hours away, there's nowhere for me to play Yu-Gi-Oh. Remote duel locals, even after things start opening up, might be a way for those players to actually play Yu-Gi-Oh with physical cards. Could be pretty cool. MBT also pointed out that remote duel locals are really cool because in between rounds you have a lot more freedom. You can watch TV, you can make some food, you can go to the bathroom, you can do whatever, unlike a regular in-person locals where once you're there, you're pretty much stuck there for the entire tournament. When I asked my friend Zach from ZButlerTCG, he had a couple thoughts as well. He mentioned that the prize support was really good, which makes sense because, like I said, he has gotten a lot of prize support from his locals for doing well in these remote duel tournaments. He also mentioned that it was a more diverse format than he saw online using unofficial simulators, and I think that's just because locals in general are usually more casual than your bigger tournaments. But what about the downsides of remote dueling? Because remote dueling is not perfect, and I think most people know that. I'm pretty sure it was never supposed to be a thing until the pandemic happened, and Konami wanted players to have a way to play with their cards while locals were still closed. So one of the bigger downsides of remote dueling that I've noticed is that reading your opponent's cards is a lot more complicated. Instead of just picking up their cards and reading them for yourself, you usually have to look them up on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Neuron app, and I'm not even sure what people did before that. I guess your opponent can just read through the effect out loud, but as someone that always enjoyed reading my opponent's cards instead of having them explain them to me, yeah, that's a part that I noticed quite a lot, especially when you're playing a rogue strategy. Your opponent might not know what many of your cards do, and instead of just giving them to read, now they have to look up each and every one, which certainly can slow down the match. So that is probably, in my opinion, after all the remote duels that I've done, one of, if not the biggest downside. Yu-Gi-Oh! Neuron helps us out a lot, but it's never going to be quite the same as just reaching over and reading my opponent's cards. The other problem is sort of people accidentally tilting their hands to the camera so their opponents can see them. I'm pretty sure in every single remote duel match that I've ever seen, someone, maybe not both players, but someone tilts their hand and their opponent can see it. And yeah, it's hard to not do that because it's kind of weird, right? You have to hold your hand straight up and down, or maybe even tilted towards yourself, where in most matches, at least in person, you could tilt it back a little bit. I remember in the remote duel invitational, I was trying to be very, very careful about this. I almost always didn't do the actual just like vertical. I actually always tilted it towards myself, but that is a very unnatural way to hold the cards. But obviously you don't want your opponent knowing what you have in your hand as far as extenders go, or hand traps, or board breaking cards, or just in general. Obviously you don't want your opponent having more information than they're supposed to have. I'm not sure if there's a great workaround for this immediately. I think the workaround is just before you actually play in a remote duel locals, maybe do a few test hands and make sure that your opponent wouldn't be able to see what you have. That might be pretty valuable for players that are just starting out in remote duels. The last downside that I'm going to mention before talking about what MBT and ZButler had to say is that, yes, I know that cheating is very possible with remote duels. I've seen so so many people, most of which I'm pretty sure have never played in a remote duel, complain about the potential for cheating. Here's the deal, just like in real life Yu-Gi-Oh, there's only so much you can do to preemptively stop cheaters from trying to cheat. At the end of the day, there are cheaters in physical card games as well, and they're punished accordingly. In remote dueling, which is supposed to be pretty casual, just a way for players to actually play with their local friends and stuff like that during the pandemic, if you're someone that's really gonna go out of your way to cheat, you probably would have done that with physical dueling as well. And I think that the idea here is that if someone is going to go out there and actually cheat during remote duel tournaments, they're going to be punished accordingly because they are official events and you can be punished for cheating in them, especially if it turns out to be intentional. There are plenty of ways to stop people from cheating. For example, in the Remote Duel Invitational, we had to have all of our cards on the table, the extra deck, the side deck, the main deck, and when you were side decking, you had to show that on the screen. Not show your opponent which cards you're side decking, of course, but just show them that you're not pulling out cards from a binder off camera. I'm sure that someone out there wants to cheat in remote duels. I'm not saying that no one is going to try, but generally speaking, there's no real reason to, and hopefully official tournament stores will punish cheaters accordingly. Back to MBT Yu-Gi-Oh and ZButlerTCG, MBT pointed out that one of the challenges that he's noticed is that, yeah, he misses not being able to hang out with people in between rounds. Of course, on Discord, you can have a separate tab for that, like in between rounds and stuff, but yeah, nothing is going to be quite the same as actually meeting up with your friends at locals and just sort of hanging out in between rounds. So that is definitely a challenge. Zach mentioned that in his remote duels, one of the challenges that he noticed is that sometimes players would rush through their plays and maybe not account for their opponents having any connection issues. Now in the Remote Duel Invitational, if you guys watched that, you might have noticed that we had a play/pause card on the screen, and that was able to show our opponents if we were lagging, even if we were unable to tell them. Zach also mentioned that one of the biggest challenges of remote dueling was just getting people from his locals excited about it and willing to try it out at least 1 or 2 times. And personally, and I'm sure we've already seen it in the comment section of today's video, I think that may be the biggest challenge with remote duels just in general. I think people are so afraid of cheating and so afraid of the technical difficulties that they're not even willing to give it a shot. And I think that is a real shame because, yeah, I do miss going to locals, and if people around me were doing remote duel locals, I definitely would be playing in them. It would be a lot of fun. Still, I have had some fun just playing remote duels with my friends outside of tournaments, as well as obviously like the Remote Duel Invitational was a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video about some of the benefits and challenges that remote dueling has. I think it's a really cool thing, and I think more people should give it a chance. I'll see you guys later though. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Goodbye.